Fear is an emotion that I know all too well. I grew up in Singapore, I am Singaporean, and I think something quite prevalent in my experience growing up was a lot of fear-based talk. And what I mean by that is that a lot of the pursuits that I was pushed into as a child were not necessarily because I enjoyed those things, for instance, extracurricular activities or learning various interests and hobbies. It was because there was a feeling of FOMO involved, where if I didn't learn piano or I didn't learn ballet, or if I didn't take this extra class, I could be missing out on an opportunity that would otherwise be taken by somebody else. And this fear has been driving my life forward. That's not to say that I didn't enjoy music or dance. I truly did. However, the presence of fear made it really difficult to wholeheartedly enjoy and develop myself in those areas. And now in my late 20s, I'm realizing how this program of fear has been running my life for such a long time. And although it has been a motivating factor for me to move forward with things that I'm afraid of missing out on, it is also the number one thing that is killing my dreams. I just did something that, in my opinion, in my world, is pretty fearless, and I want to share some lessons with you guys about what I experienced and what I discovered when I worked through my fears and what are the breakthroughs that I received. So being in materialistic, capitalistic Singapore, I decided that I wanted to do a spiritual retreat in America, all the way from the other side of the world, and it was going to be a 30-day retreat. The thought of just being away from work for a month, the thought of potentially having to change jobs, change my income, change the kind of career that I've built up for myself was so immensely scary. And yet, the thing that I wanted the most was to develop myself spiritually, to have a larger slice of my life and my time be in spiritual related pursuits rather than the previous version where much of my time was spent on more professional career related pursuits. And this brings me to the first point that I want to bring up in today's video, which is that sometimes we can be afraid of the things that we want the most. Like I said, going to this retreat really mattered to me because I wanted to deepen my spirituality and make that a path for myself, but I was so freaking scared of taking that step forward because I thought that everything would go wrong. Every possible thing could go wrong. I was so ghastly afraid of the reality that I most wanted to see in my life, which was to do what I love for a living and be true to myself. I think a lot of people can relate to that, in that we may want something so badly, like really wanting a relationship or wanting a family or wanting certain friendships, but at the same time we're so afraid of the relationship failing, the friendships not working out, or having conflict and betrayal, or we're afraid of the fact that we won't be able to have family because of various health reasons or biological reasons. And all of these things, all of these fears exist in the future, and they are preventing us from moving forward to receive the future that we want to have, to become part of the future that we have been dreaming of. And this brings me to the second point in this video, which is that fear can oftentimes create this emotional and mental fog in our head space and heart space, and it prevents us from seeing the path forward clearly and seeing what's possible for us in the future. I experienced this so much in my life, where the moment I feel fear, I can instantly just get into a fight or flight response where all I'm thinking of is that I need to get out of this fear state. And when I'm reacting to the situation, most of the time I end up choosing the comfort zone. I don't end up choosing with courage or choosing what's difficult to do. I just swing all the way to the other side to choose what's easy and what I have always known, which may not necessarily be good to me. And if you asked me what I was really afraid of, I couldn't really tell you a straight answer. And that's what the mental and emotional fog does to me. I would say that I'm afraid of success, and I'm also afraid of failure. I'm afraid of living my life, but I'm also afraid of judgments. I'm afraid of every single possible thing, to the point that it just gets into this jumbled mess, and all I want to do is to shove this mess underneath the carpet and just live my comfortable life and just do what I've always been doing. And boy, it's taken me a long time to realize that this response pattern just really does not work. It doesn't bring me closer to my dreams and my ideals. It, in fact, brings me further and further and further away from my path. So I noticed that when I'm stuck in these fear-based thoughts, I am not being very constructive with my energy, with my knowledge, with my time at all. I'm not able to think of solutions. I'm not able to even analyze the problem from a logical standpoint. I'm just getting my emotions and overthinking energy all jumbled up together and completely missing the point. And I've noticed that the longer I stay in this fear state, the longer I prolong my suffering. Sometimes I think that if I do what I'm afraid of, I'm going to end up in a lot of pain, or I will potentially take a huge risk and fall. But really, when I'm staying here in this comfort zone, away from my fear and living a life that doesn't really feel completely aligned to me, I'm also suffering longer than I needed to. And I could just confront the fear and change my reality. And of course, confronting one's fears is oftentimes easier said than done, because these fears have been building up inside of us for such a long time, and untangling them to find the root cause is not something that can be done overnight. Like I mentioned, I grew up with so much fear-based language around me. There was fear that if one didn't pick the highest paying job, that one would have a bad outcome in life. If someone chose the wrong partner in a relationship, that they would end up in divorce. Every single choice and every single thing that I was trying to do has some kind of fear related to it. All of these programming and conditioning is just screaming at me constantly, and it becomes really difficult to hear the voice of courage and confidence that is present in me amidst all of this noise. So what I have learned from dealing with my fears is, instead of trying to confront them, I learned to allow them to exist. And what I mean by that is to not judge yourself for having these fears, to not instantly brand the fear as a good or a bad thing. I brought this up earlier on, that when I have fears, my tendency is to shove them under the carpet and pretend that they don't exist. And by doing that, I'm pretending that my dreams are not as big of a deal that I make them to be, because I don't want my fears to be that big of a deal. And I'm trying to make do with the life that I have and convince myself that, yeah, there are many good things about this life. You know, I have stability, I have friends, I have things that I want here, so why am I not just doing this thing? And this state of pretending that my fear doesn't exist and trying so damn hard to convince myself that my current life is amazing is not constructive at all. When I allow my fears to exist, I also create space for me to observe what my reactions to these fears are. I then create the opportunity for me to choose my response to fear. I think this is arguably the most difficult step out of everything that I've just mentioned, because there are 1,000,001 reasons not to do the things that you are the most afraid of, and even more reasons to stay in the comfort zone. And so having this awareness of what is the best thing to do for me, what is in my highest good, is a skill that takes time to develop. And if you're feeling like it's really difficult to immediately confront your biggest fear in life, an easy place to start is to look at some of the smaller fears. So an example could be that sometimes I'm afraid of telling the waiter that they got my order wrong. Instead of just eating the wrong order, which is what I would used to do, I can choose to respond differently by raising my hand and telling the waiter that this is not my order. Starting from these small places builds up this confidence and track record inside of yourself to know that you can confront your fears, you know how to do it, you have the tools to do what you're afraid of and still continue surviving and living. It won't be the end of the world. When we build up this track record of success and courage, it gives us a stronger foundation to then look at the things that we are most afraid of, to confront some of the fears entrepreneurs that would really make a huge change in our lives. Something else that I think is really helpful also is to get external feedback when we are feeling afraid. I can easily end up in a lot of overthinking and overanalyzing, and even if I give myself space to observe my reactions, sometimes I don't have the wisdom to find the right response to deal with this fear. So speaking to somebody that you trust, reading a book, even watching a YouTube video or a podcast with the kind of topics that you're looking for gives you external input and knowledge that could help you overcome this fear. Because sometimes what we need to overcome our fears is simply just a knowledge gap. For instance, if you are a first-time entrepreneur, doing business could be a really scary move. And that makes sense because you've never done it before. But by getting knowledge from long-time entrepreneurs, by people who write business books, by mentors in the business realm, they are able to look at your situation and have a very different perspective compared to what you are looking. So having external feedback is also really important, I feel. And the crucial thing about this is to get information from sources that you can trust and be cautious of other people projecting their fears on you when you ask them for advice. So sometimes we go to people for advice and they don't really give us wisdom-based advice. They're giving us also their fear-based concerns. And to that, I would be more discerning about what information I'm receiving and what is helpful for me. And the last tip that I have is to start taking action. Just by doing the things that you're afraid of can instantly reduce the fear by a significant amount. Using myself as an example, before I even decided 100% that I was going on that spiritual retreat, I put down the money for the deposit so that I would set the intention and give myself a firm signal that I am going, that I'm gonna be there, and that this is going to happen. And just doing that gives my subconscious mind even more confirmation that this is happening, and it reduced my fear significantly because I already took one action step towards that destination. The next steps would be to look at my finances, to plan out what I need for the trip, to buy any travel essentials, to find an Airbnb, book my airplane tickets. All of those baby steps towards making that final push to go for that retreat are things that can be done along the way. I noticed that a lot of times it's not a single leap of faith that needs to take place, but the leap of faith takes place over a length of time, and there are things that we can do during this duration to get to that destination, knowing that you can take the first move. For instance, if you are looking for a relationship, maybe signing up to a dating app, swiping right on someone, initiating a conversation with someone. All of these things are steps that you can take to then eventually make the full leap of faith to start a relationship with somebody. So these are some practical tips that I hope were helpful to you as you are moving through anything that you are feeling afraid of in your life. And what I can say after going through my own fear process and emerging from it is that it is so fulfilling. I'm so glad that I chose courage and I chose to trust in the universe, in myself, as opposed to being afraid of what I can do. I am so grateful of the person that I am today and what she has accomplished. And I just know that this is going to be so possible for you as well in your life. So again, thank you so much for being here and being you, and I wish you all the very best, and I look forward to seeing you in a future video. Bye!